Hello everybody, welcome back to another One Piece review. This time we're covering manga chapter 1167, and immediately the thing I like most about this chapter is Oda took certain scenes that we come to know from the story of One Piece. He had a scene from the Fisher Tiger flashback, but he added a King Harold slash Elbaf sprinkle to it, so I appreciate that. And with the God Valiant out of the way, now he's focusing on the answers when it comes to Elbaf and what the questions that we've had, specifically with Ida. But are things as cut and dry as they seem? I'll talk about that later, but those are just elements that I appreciate about this chapter. But overall, this was a great chapter. Like, Oda proved why he's the GOAT when it comes to like foreshadowing and world building. We start off with the cover page with the cover request, and we got Gen and Nojiko on the cover request. And we see a cat stealing a book, but they're not upset, and the caption reads they're not upset, and why would they be? Because obviously they're reminded of Nami's. And we start off immediately with the chapter, and what did I say in the previous review? I knew Oda would be back at it again with the time skips, and boy did we get a bunch of them. He's putting the building blocks together for the finale of this flashback, which is the incident involving King Harold and Loki and what went down there. We start off this chapter 33 years ago, 5 years after the God Valley incident, so immediately with Rocks out of the picture, this becomes Roger's era. We go over to the sea where a pirate ship, a random pirate ship, is pretty much stormed by King Harold and his giant ship that comes out of the fog, and immediately wastes no time. He's a puppet of the world government now, so he just trashes this pirate ship like it's nothing. So Oda decides to use this moment to also hype up the other pirates during this era. Is going to make a huge wave, that being Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom. Obviously, they become the future Yonko, and also Shanks, who we see later on in this chapter. Pirates, we know what happens with them. We know Glorious Soa and the original Buckingham Stussy and what happened to them. Then we see a panel of Shiki, which we know he got locked up in Baldown. There's another panel of somebody who I can honestly think is maybe related to Carabo, and I only say that because he's got the tongue action going on. Oda highlighting the fact what I just said. The Rocks pirates out the way. This is Roger's era, and here we get a panel of the Roger pirates, and immediately cuts to his execution. So Oda wasn't wasting time with like the Roger era, because we know what went down. I like how Oda's taking us back to behind the scenes of what went down during this period where we see the world government. They're negotiating with King Harold, and apparently they make him an honorary member of the God's Knights, the Holy Knights. So that makes sense considering what we've heard from Saint Summers about how King Harold screwed things up. So apparently he's God's Steel of the Holy Knights. He has the marking on his arm, similar to how we saw Shanks for the first time in this flashback, and how he had the same marking. Gorosei go on to say there's 3 levels of a contract. The shallow sea contract is more minor pact. The deep sea contracts are reserved for those who are to be bound fully to the true God. I'm assuming that's Emu. Who else could it be? Only 13 individuals in the entire world receive that privilege. This is where the manipulation tactics kick in, because you'll come to know the greatest depths of this world on the day you become a full Knight of God. King Harold is like, could Elbaf become a nation then? And Saturn, naturally. The thing is, he knows he's being manipulated, because we heard what he said in the previous chapter. Like, I'll do whatever it takes to atone for these sins from Elbaf from the past 1,000 years, even if it means becoming a slave. So he knows what's up. Then we see Garling chilling out. He's rocking with the goatee now. So then we see Shamrock has become a Holy Knight. Of course he has. And we find out that King Harold is also a Holy Knight. But then this is where Garling says, we'll keep a long distance transponder snail, and we'll call you if we need you. Basically, do what you want, go across the seas, but you're forbidden from talking about any of these events. Like, you don't talk to anybody about this. This is where the world building kicks in, because we go 20 years ago. We go to Fishman Island 20 years ago, where King Neptune and King Harold are, I guess they're shooting the shit here because they're drinking it up, and apparently there's a joke inside, because King Neptune is trying to get King Harold to have, in 4 years, Shirahoshi is going to be born, so let's get Shirahoshi, which by the way is kind of sus, because Shirahoshi hasn't even been born yet, and already King Neptune is thinking about, let's have Shirahoshi get together with Loki, who's at this point pretty much a young adult at this point. I did tell you a fortune teller predicted of Madame Shirley, obviously projected that Shirahoshi's birth will be the prophecy for the future king of the pirates, Luffy, I'd have a daughter in 4 years. When the time is right, why don't we have Loki to my future daughter? So, which is kind of weird because there is such a huge age gap. So, Big Mom also wanted Lola to marry Loki too, and that didn't work out. So then we cut to, in the same year, we see that King Harold and Ripley meet Soul for the first time. That was pretty cool. And they kind of introduce him to the Owl Library. But then, would you be willing to open up a school? And Soul's like, yeah. That's great and all, but the only messed up thing is we know what's taking place in the present right now. So then we cut 15 years ago. See what I'm talking about with the time jumps with Oda. We cut to, in my opinion, probably one of the best parts of the entire chapter, just because it ties up so much. 15 years ago, we go to the Fisher Tiger incident. The Holy Land, we know who he ends up saving, but we find out who ends up freeing him. So he's on the run, and he thinks he sees a holy knight in the distance, a silhouette. Little do we know, he's saved by Shanks, because Shanks steps in, clear as day. One, because half the side of his face was silhouetted. Two, we know how Shanks is. So he comes in, and he pretty much just cuts the chains and shackles off Fisher Tiger, and that frees Fisher Tiger to do what he needs to do, which causes a huge impact on the world of One Piece going forward. We know where this is leading, so I just love that element that Oda added to this Fisher Tiger experience with the use of the Elbaf and King Harold backstory. I like that, but it ended up being Shanks who ended up freeing Fisher Tiger, who ends up saving the Boy Sisters and Koala. Case in point, we cut to Sanda Sonya, who's telling Boa Hancock, hey, someone's fighting to free us from this cell, let's go. We also see Koala being told the same thing. This attack on the Holy Land was carried out, we need to run. So I love the 3 panels of the people that Fisher Tiger ended up freeing, and that's not been explained up until this point. So that's a big deal. And it makes sense why Shanks would be there and be the one to do it, because there has to be no other time that Shanks does this. Following the Fisher Tiger incident, freed by Shanks, we go to Shanks being introduced to King Harold by St. Garling, and he's also going to be a holy knight apparently, so I believe he make a great asset on par with Shamrock. No kidding, because I mean at this point Shanks is far superior based on what we've seen, unless something changes. But every time he has shown anything is when Loki has been shackled, and that doesn't really paint a good picture considering how Oda tried to hide Shamrock up at the start of the year. Oh boy, how quickly things have changed. 2 different sides from Shanks, because he acts like a holy knight, because he was responding to King Harold, I think I've seen you before, and then Shanks goes on to say, I don't know what you're talking about, you're just a giant commoner from the surface, don't act so familiar, I was blessed with the figure-length blood in my veins. But in another panel when he says that, you clearly see some regret, because he doesn't feel that way. We know how Shanks is, so this is another detail that Oda included, because we see he has his bandages over his eye due to the clash involving Teach. So I like that, but obviously Oda's not going to show that until we get a Teach flashback or a Shanks only flashbacks. But I do like we're getting some interaction between the brothers. Apparently it says Shamrock, I wish to deepen my knowledge of the Holy Land. They got on word there's a traitor that freed Fisher Tiger, so Shanks is playing dub. So whether or not Shamrock's buying that or not, or whether he's just an idiot, I don't know. But when Shamrock was talking about Shanks early in the year, it did seem like he didn't harbour some resentment towards Shanks for leaving. I think you want to talk about hidden motives. I think Shanks has that motive in mind, like he's trying to get intel. I hated everything down there. So he's talking with Shamrock, but clearly that's a lie. And you see King Harold clearly got this look on his face. I'm not sure if I'm buying that. So in the same year we cut to obviously the tragedy that's about to go down involving Ida. So we find out that she's become ill. She's caught an illness, much similar to how Estrid carried an illness, although that was due to the birth of Loki. What makes this worse is you don't have King Harold in sight. He's off doing his own thing. But even in this situation, Ida's still thinking about the tavern and befriending sailors from all over the world. That goes in par with what King Harold is looking for. When it comes to uniting Elbaf for the rest of the world, the problem is the way he's going about it is not going to work. But Ida's doing the right thing here. And it's like, it may not be much, but I feel like I'm helping Harold by doing that. Then we go to Loki doing whatever he's doing, immediately talking about how, oh, Ida should reopen that tavern, but he doesn't know that Ida's bedridden by illness right now. But we come to find out very soon why that is. So, why this is going on, not helping, is Haroldine with his crew are going out doing their own thing. And apparently at this point they're looking for a doctor. So Ida, even in this situation, is only thinking about others. She's not thinking about herself. Like, in my opinion, the best character of this entire flashback. Like, I know some people want to go with, like, Zebek, but Ida's been the one constant here. For this entire flashback, I stand my case on that. The best character of this entire flashback. Not even close. If there's a number two, it's definitely Zebek, but then we get to the nitty-gritty of the circumstances of why Ida is pretty much ill. So we find out two people are relatives of Estrid. So, I mean, the trash lingers on. Estrid had trash left behind because they're pretty much responsible for Ida and the illness. And I'm guessing Loki overheard this because it says, "What did you just say? Ida really isn't going to die." So then the idiots proceed to pretty much admit, "Oh, hey, we can't let anyone have a claim on our inheritance." So this is all about money and finance and whatever. So, but the problem is they're telling this to Loki, who's pretty much a loose cannon who can go off at any moment, and he does. He pretty much terrorizes the area, burns the area, and then he pretty much kills both. So they pretty much poisoned Ida. So this illness was caused by them. And then he goes to say, this stuff is fatal. Her days are numbered. But I love what he says here. He says, "Now answer, Ida won't actually die, right? She's the only mother I've ever known." And that's how the chapter ends. So that's how Oda wraps up this chapter, and a damn good one, honestly. Like, there's elements that Oda tied in with the lore of what we already know, but he added the Elbaf King Harold sprinkle with Shanks being revealed as the one who freed Fisher Tiger. But now we know who it was that freed Fisher Tiger in the first place. So that element I appreciated. Plus the ending of this chapter when it comes to, like, the Ida and Loki situation, how the interactions, like, mingled in, and how it really matured Loki, and how he viewed Ida as his actual mother, even if it's not by blood. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Before this chapter and before this flashback took off, and we knew anything about Ida, I did say about the character of Mosa that Loki knew, and how if that was Ida, maybe the situation mirrors what we saw with Sukiyaki. How he was quote-unquote poisoned, but we come to find out through Robin, that wasn't the case. He was captured, thrown on the ground. How ironic is it? In this chapter, we find out that Ida has been quote-unquote poisoned, and because Loki is, like, questioning the remnants of Estrid's family, like, now answer, Ida won't actually die, right? After just hearing that Ida was poisoned. So why would he ask that if he already knows that? So is there a possibility that Ida is still alive and we're made to believe, quote unquote, she's been poisoned? Or is this a case where this situation could lead to King Harold flipping the script and actually seeing the light and actually doing things the right way? Instead of, like, trying to unite Elbaf for the rest of the world, he's going to realize that the one constant that made him change his complete outlook in life is a part of this tragedy, and he could have been there to prevent this. King Harold is going to find out about this, and he's going to get pissed off, and he's going to leave the world government. But I don't think my stance is changing. I do think King Harold's going to, like, submit to that Domi Reversi. We're going to get Domi Reversi part 3. And I say this because of two things. One, because of, obviously, what I said previously, that Oda had King Harold's silhouette at the beginning of this flashback when he was shish kebabbed, when we already saw the portrait of what King Harold looked like. So I questioned why. Then you want to follow that up with what Scarpa said before this flashback even took place, where he said, "Oh, the hockey I sense coming from the..." Well, he didn't see it, but he obviously sensed the hockey coming from Gunko's transformation once Imu took over. And what ended up happening after that? We got Dorian Brogy and their crew and the Giants being taken over by Domi Reversi. So that's not just a coincidence that Oda did that. So they may end up making King Harold's story a little bit better if he actually decides to do the right thing up until the end. So That's where this could be leading. Or what I just said is what we think is either being poisoned is going to be quote unquote just a masquerading the fact that Ida is still alive as somebody else. Maybe the family of Astrid, obviously poisoning Ida. Did they do this on their own, or did they have somebody else instruct them? Because we know how the higher ups who were silhouetted by Oda. I want to remind you about this, but we know the higher ups had a problem with Ida becoming a royal because of she's not affiliated with Elbaf, she's from elsewhere, she's an outsider. Ida got poisoned has something to do with the higher ups, and obviously we know that they have a huge hand. They apparently oversee whatever King Harold wants, so did they have a say in this as well, or are they dead? With all the time skips involved in this chapter, like with only certain weeks left in the year, that means there's only certain chapters left in 2025. So Oda's going to wrap up this flashback. If Oda's going to wrap up this flashback, he needs to like amp up the pacing. That's what this chapter was, but I like what he did. So he's going to tie the bow on this flashback, on this King Harold backstory, and he's going to open up the new year, go back in the present with what's going on with the Straw Hats, and we're going to get that Loki and Haradine reconciliation moment that this flashback's been building towards. And how ironic is it, I just mentioned like the two best characters to come out of this flashback are the biggest influences on Loki's life. We can look forward to 2026 and Return of the Straw Hats. And it also looks like, due to what we got in the anime with the trailer, like revealing the remaining episodes in the Egghead Island, we may be entering Elbaf to start 2026 as well. So we're going to be seeing the Straw Hats in Elbaf one way or another in 2026. So that's my thoughts. Tell me yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, you guys know what to do. Hit that thumbs up. I appreciate all your support when it comes to these reviews. Take it easy, guys. Bye.